Thank you so much for coming to check out this video. Let me just let you know real quick what's going down. I'm meeting with Sam from Riverside Church. He's a worship pastor, and you'll hear a little bit more about his story. But I want to let you know as you watch this, this is something we like to say, and you'll hear it in here, is compassion through conversation. And we're just really trying to, in the season, to have more conversations. And so in this, you're seeing a raw and real conversation, not a statement force, not a polarizing thing, just two people coming together, voicing where they are, talking through the current events and the issues. And so I would encourage you to lean in, open up your heart, and just realize that the conversation is still going. And I hope that this would be a good template for us who are watching to go out of our way to sit down with people who have maybe different worldviews or who have been through different lives, that we would come together to understand, and in all of it, that we would find unity in Christ Jesus. So I hope this blesses you. Thanks for checking it out. Appreciate you guys. No, man, I really appreciate you taking time to just chat for a little bit. I think I've been telling my wife this season's like tough, and not for me. It's tough for me to understand what, people, my brothers and sisters in your community are going through and stuff. And I just want to be as best leader as I can be by not just voicing, but being a part of the solution moving forward. And not that I've ever not been a part of that, but it brings out to light a lot of stuff. So something I'm trying to teach our church, which will be happening more this weekend, is compassion through conversation. Like that's kind of like this that slogan, dialogue before decisions. Like that's kind of been like my slogan through all this, instead of it just being like post, look at this, and just these polarizing statements.
Right.
And realizing there is an issue at hand that needs to be voiced, and not everyone's going to like it, and it's going to be uncomfortable. So there's obviously that, but there's a lot of compassion that comes through conversation, and I think a lot of people are trying to teach and learn. I'll speak from my side. A lot of people in the white community are trying to teach and post things and learn without the compassion side of things, and I think that's dangerous. And so I think I want to lead from compassion, and the more I open myself up these conversations, it makes me a better leader, because I'm leading from now compassion. Does that make sense? So I really appreciate you taking that time. And just wanted to first, people, I guess if I am recording this, because I didn't even tell people who this is Sam. Sam is an awesome worship leader at Riverside Community. My wife told me to tell you that you still have written her favorite song, No Take Backs. She wanted me to tell you that everyone heard that. So she's trying to, I don't know if she's trying to push the agenda so our worship pastor or director listens to this and goes, okay, we need to do it. So she's been trying to get that song for us to play here and stuff like that. But real quick though, man, if you just want to say hi and who you are, and just real quick, like just a quick, nothing with this, just quick brief, who you are, where you're from, what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really quick brief. My name is Sam Misigaro. I'm the worship pastor at Riverside Community Church, as Shawn Jensen mentioned. I was born and raised in Peoria, Illinois. I am the fifth child, the last born in the family I grew up in. My parents are originally from Tanzania, and now I have a lovely wife named Jordan and two beautiful babies. So that's the life we live in.
So you're a native to Peoria.
I'm native, born and raised. The only one in my family born in Peoria. Everyone else was born in Tanzania.
Wow.
But yeah, in fact, the sister right above me was conceived in America, and my mom flew back to Africa to have her in Africa. And then the lastborns are lastborns. They don't care as much as we're born. So yeah, that's it.
Cool, man. Cool. My question, and this is going to be really broad, and that's fine. My question is, what are your thoughts of the current events? I mean, just it's a crazy time to be alive, on the edge of the COVID and the pandemic. You guys just mentioned you're going back to meet live and stuff, but now after all that tension, with George Floyd and
For sure.
and what I would say was a murder of George Floyd. And that just rising up in this hostile, like we're right now as we're videoing this is in the middle of riots, peaceful protesting,
Sure.
um, hate, polarizing,
Yeah.
just in the middle of that. So what is your take on the events? And we'll get a little bit cleaner on that. I just want a broad
Sure.
overtake. So
So I guess just initially when I watched the George Floyd video, I think I'll try and mostly speak for myself, but I
yeah,
think
that's
when I've talked even of color, they all kind of relate to. You just are kind of like reliving experiences that you might have had with law enforcement that for some reason or another didn't go to that extent, but in the back of your mind, you feel pretty confident that it's maybe not consistent in communities that don't look like yours, you know. And so initially, that's kind of where your mind goes when you see that. I mean, after first like just grieving and mourning the atrocity that is someone losing their life while being handcuffed. That's the initial thought, and then it's kind of as you sit on it a bit, you kind of start to like think through, and you almost like, at least for myself, I almost like look at every interaction that I've had with law enforcement, even the number of interactions I've had with law enforcement, and every individual one, maybe isolated by itself, it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't that bad, that was okay. But when I look at the grand scale and I compile all the data, you can't help but kind of think and kind of question, like, is this happening everywhere, or is this just happening in places where people live that look like me, you know?
yeah.
So that's kind of the initial thoughts and the initial things that were kind of being thought through and processed.
Yeah.
At least from, yeah.
And how about like just the reaction? Not the reaction. That's not the right word. How about the now that came to media? I would say the reaction, but now where we are today with these events, the peaceful protesting, and what are some things that you feel like, from your perspective, if you could speak to those events, maybe if it's the things you enjoy or the things that have brought hope, or maybe just some things that you see in light of everything happening right now.
Yeah. So I personally believe I have nothing against peaceful protesting. Obviously, looting is a criminal act, and that has no place, and that's just awful, and it's unfortunate. And I think that there are people that are just opportunists and saw a chance to make a quick come up, and they went after it. But I guess initially I'm just like, I'm not somebody that has anything against protests, but I just believe in what you said at the beginning of this conversation. Just I forget how you worded it. What did you say? Change through conversation. What was it?
Compassion through conversation.
Yeah, I just believe that there's so much power in people having conversation and people doing and living life and experiencing what just spending more time with people that don't look and think and act like you.
Yeah.
I'm not the I don't know that I've ever seen decent change ever come from a lot of protests. I feel like I've seen a lot more come from just conversation. I don't know that I've seen decent change come from a post or somebody posting.
Yeah.
It's I mean, that's good. That's a good place to start, and it's a good place to maybe get some information and maybe make an initial connection. But after the protest, after the post, after the initial feelings of, man, we got to do something, like the conversation is the thing that has to continue, and there always just has to be like an open door policy on that.
Yeah.
We should always, this is something that as uncomfortable as it is to talk about, we should always be willing and wanting and able.
No, man. I think I just want to say on my end, because I know like it kind of sound like that question can sound like, hey, you see, I'm talking to a person with different skin color than me who said looting and violence is not the answer. It's like, okay, we know, but honestly, on my end, I want to say personally that when I've been pushed for anything over and over in a small amount of time, do not, in your anger, do not sin. I have, from my anger, from these moments. And so I do want to say, I think compassion is understanding someone's anger without condoning maybe the sin that could come from it. And
Sure.
so I just want to say, from me, if people end up watching this and stuff like that, is me saying when it comes to the rioting and the looting, like, I want to I understand. Like, I guess that sounds awful, but I understand how things could escalate. Now, there might be more to the story. There might be all these things, conspiracy theories and all that. But I want to say, as far as, all that stuff that's happening is the provoking. What is really humbling to me is seeing so many leaders like yourself and leaders that I follow in the church specifically who have had such self-control. Because I know it hurts. It hurts not just to see it, your brothers and sisters, I'm sure, but it hurts to have to hold something in too. And I just want to say I commend just so many people who are voicing where you guys, I don't want to say stand, but voicing the pain and voicing it, but doing it in a way and self-control, as far as people in church and living by what God's word says. And so I just want to say from my heart breaks. I understand. I don't understand. I understand the anger part. I don't understand the depth of it in the least bit. So don't hear me wrong with that. I don't understand a day, what it means walking in Sam's shoes or anything like that. I just get that when I get angry, I can lash out. So I just want to say, man, like, I just appreciate you. I really do. And I know I'm saying that from a distance. We may not be like, we've seen people at like summer camp things and, at Bloom and stuff, but just being able to watch certain people from a distance, that's why I reached out to you personally. So I just wanted to say sorry. I get the anger in what we're seeing, but there's so much more to play at the story. And,
there definitely is. And I'll say, there is an anger there, and there is a grieving process that takes place kind of when we.
I can't imagine.
When we see the initial video. However, I don't. I'm going to be bold in what I'm saying here, but again, like you mentioned, majority of the maybe protest thing that is happening is legal, is organized, is an exercise of the 13th Amendment. It's not problematic. I do think that there is a very small, it doesn't take a lot, there's a small percentage of people who are just, again, like I said, opportunists. I would argue that, I've grieved many things, and granted the anger that you feel when you're a person of color and you watch that video, it's unlike the rest of the grief, but it doesn't matter anything that anybody grieves, whether you lose a loved one, whether you have a child die. I've experienced all those things, and there's never a thought that, like, I'm gonna go, let's go to Best Buy and smash. So I can't even justify, just as a person of color, and I've talked to a lot of people, I can't justify what I saw and the anger I feel by acting out and doing something criminal. Like, maybe I might say something hurtful. Maybe I might ask an unfair question. But I do think that we have to, like, say what it is. I do think we have to call protesters, and we have to call looters.
Absolutely.
Majority of the looters, again, are just opportunists that I think are appropriating really the life of George Floyd. And it's sad to see it happen, but those people exist, I guess.
And that's so good you said that, man, because I appreciate how you just used your wisdom, even with what I said, to be like, hey, for me though, like, I've never once thought about needing another flat screen TV and going into showing this and stuff. And I'm not saying that to devalue anyone. It's everyone's been a part of that on different skin colors and stuff. So I really appreciate you not gently just correcting that, but having that conversation with me. So it really helps. And that's the whole purpose of this, man, is to just see the different conversations and hearts as I try navigating this with my church. I'm in Pontiac, Illinois, and we do have people in our community. I don't like saying black community because I And again, I hate when people say people are colorblind because that's dumb.
Yeah.
God created them to see that. Like that's the uniqueness of them. It's just that they're not devalued. We're the same person. It's
Yeah.
don't be I'm colorblind. No, stop. Like
Yeah.
you need to see their color and treat them the
Yeah.
same. That's the goal. And so
Right.
sorry, I'm preaching. So being here, I know that when these things happen in my community, I think sometimes people in my community can get a bad rep that they can put the label of racist on them and do these things or whatever. And I don't think most of the people I come in contact with who people may label that, it's not really a blatant thing or something. They're like, yeah, we're this at all. I think it's just, and I'm not going to use the word ignorant. I think it's just they're learning to become more aware of it. And so I do want to honor a lot of people who may get that label. But I do think we need to be careful, even as this pastor talking right now, the more I'm talking with people outside, because I was raised in Pontiac, but I went to Tulsa for a couple of years, and that's when I was 20. So that's when my whole worldview was like, oh my gosh. When you start seeing it and when you start actually having friends who are predominantly more, of different color. I'm talking one after, I'm talking to a friend who's black right after this, who's in Tulsa. And that's something because I had these friends come when I was there. And so, and I was that person. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I have more grace for people in my town who sometimes can not even get a second chance while we have these conversations. Because from a standpoint, they may not speak up or they may not do this. And I don't think it's because of the same reasons why. But for me saying that does not negate that we should be doing our best to open our eyes, open our hearts, and really understand what's happening. So I'm going to ask you this, if you're comfortable with it, is being in Peoria, and I know it happens in Pontiac because I've already heard it by talking to some of my friends and stuff, is what was it like growing up, being a person of color? You don't have to call out names or these organizations, but was it different?
Right.
Did you have moments that you could say were felt racially inclined? I'm not, what I'm saying?
Sure. And kind of like before I guess go down that trail, like I said at the beginning, I think when growing up, I look at maybe some of these events or some of these things as just like, if it only happened to me one time, it's like, oh, okay, that's whatever. Like that's just it. But the older I get and the more data you begin to compile, it just starts to kind of look like what it is. I guess as I kind of go into some of that stuff, I will say I've never. I mean, you hear words. I mean, maybe minor things like that. But growing up in Peoria, I grew up in. The street I grew up on is McClure. It's the East Bluff. It has a reputation for among people in the area for a lot of crime, and I think a lot of people associate it with a lot of violence. And if you're not familiar with the area, you might feel super unsafe, like going there. However, like I still live very close to where I grew up, and now I'm raising my own family just a few blocks away from where I grew up. I feel very safe there.
Yeah.
I mean, do I see the news that maybe a crime or something took place the night before or something like that? There was just a few blocks away, or maybe even a few houses down. I see all of that stuff. Yet I don't know. It's just something that you live in and you experience, and it's different when you're just reading stories about it all the time. I have the most beautiful neighbors, the most awesome people around me, and even though I know a lot of people would feel fearful being where I'm at, the most in fear I've ever been in my life, anytime I've ever feared for my safety and my well-being, like literally my life, has involved a police officer. Any and every time. I've never been a victim of a violent crime. I've never been a victim of a burglary. I've never been a victim of any of those sorts of things. But the only time in my life I've had a firearm pointed at me, a police officer was at the other end of it. The only time someone had come into my home and taken a family member out of my house was done by a police officer. And if you want the details of the story, you could. I can share them, but I'm not anti-police. I love the Peoria Police Department so much so.
And that's why I interviewed you, by the way, because I know your heart, but still, it's still heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Yeah, you gotta kind of call it what it is when it is. I mean, I do love police so much so that I was actually hired by the police department last fall, and I was set to go to police academy in January, and the Lord just kind of completely switched up the plan. But I'm definitely not anti-police. I'm definitely very pro-police. But at the same time, I can't deny the experiences that I've lived. So, I mean, there might be a few differences for you, and maybe another difference that at least I think of is I don't know that everyone has this, but I feel like most guys, maybe in their head, there's like a memory that they might associate with like becoming a man. Like the world no longer sees me as a boy, like that. Like, I'm a man now, kind of type of a thing. I think most dudes I talk to, there's usually some sort of memory, I don't know, that comes to their mind when I'm like, obviously, you know, being an adult man it's not a switch or something like that, but in our memory there's an event or something that we're like, whoa, I'm no longer who I was. I'm a man now, and that memory for me would have been in Peoria. I had an aunt that just gave birth to my younger cousin, and I would have been 14, going with my mom to the hospital to visit her sister and meet my baby cousin. And when we got up to the hospital room, my mom forgot the card for my baby cousin, and she asked me to just go run back down to the parking garage and go grab the card really quick. So I'm going from whatever floor I'm on, and I'm trying to make my way back to the parking garage. And when I get to the parking garage, I'm just trying to run and go grab the card really quick. And I'm so focused on what it is I'm trying to do, I don't notice small white lady also in the parking garage trying to make it to her car. At some point, her car was almost like 3 cars away from mine. At some point, as I'm like running towards her to get to my car, she's walking to hers. She stops in the parking lot and she turns around and she just like points mace at me, and she says like, "What the F do you want?" is what she says. And I completely understand how scary a parking garage can be for a single woman. I completely get it. I know, but I think like that was the moment that I realized, hey, this is how the world perceives you.
Yeah.
You're no longer a small child.
Yeah.
It's like you're no longer a small child. Like people are threatened by you. You know, for grabbing cards, for doing what you have to do. And so it's just like a shift, and it causes a shift and a difference in thinking that maybe a lot of us don't have. And obviously, I can't imagine being a small white woman and being in a parking garage and having somebody running and the need that you feel to protect yourself. I completely get it. However, at the same time, I don't know that there's a lot of conversations just about that's super scary for me, being in a parking garage.
Yeah, just what could happen. Yeah.
Just being alone with. I'll be honest, being alone with small white ladies that you don't know is kind of scary for me. There's thoughts that are like, are you afraid of me right now? Are you going to call the cops on me right now? Those are just kind of things that you think through, and because of experiences that I've lived have kind of caused me to have and have in my heart. I don't know.
No, man, that's
there. This, you know.
No, I think that's just a weight that I don't have to. I don't have to ever think about. And I do want to move back because I want to make sure your heart is set in there too.
Sure.
When you said the anti-police and you're not anti-police and stuff like that, and I know we both do, and I know for the majority people know that when these things happen with George Floyd that it's easy to see everybody else lump all the cops together and everything like that, but we know that there are cops who want to protect all lives. And I think sometimes if we leave the dialogue there, that's where we stop it. But what I'm hearing, and you can maybe correct me, is this. We know that, and I know we have police officers here who love the community, who love people, and I want to thank them and commend them for protecting us. But I think that the question would be, would we be willing to voice or lift our voice if we see any hints of practice that could be on the line of racial stereotyping, or if we hear the joke at the department, or if we're at school, or if we hear the jokes. And because the thing is, it might be a joke now, but the longer that sits in your heart, it can form our worldview. And so I think that's what I'm saying is we honor them, but I think it's not just talking about that dialogue. Oh yeah, there are good cops. I have some person I'm gonna meet with one soon and talk to them and his heart and stuff. And the issue isn't that; it's just more of the accountability. Like, hey, if you hear this, if you see this, let's just voice it. Let's just hold each other accountable. And I think that's what I'm hearing more when I meeting with people, and I could be completely off on that, is just to speak up if you even see a hint of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you even kind of talked about, like, I've been off of social media, but I just know how it works, and I think that it can be very easy for us to just not recognize ourselves and our own behaviors whenever situations or events like George Floyd happen. You know what I mean? Like, not recognize who we would actually be in the scenario. It's easy to post and just be like, get that cop fired, and the rest of the cops that were also there and spoke up and said nothing, they should be reprimanded as well. But the best predictor of your future behavior is your past behavior. What you're most likely to do when you're under pressure is what you've been doing when there's been no pressure at all. You know what I mean? Man. So if you are someone who's been at family dinner or whatever, and family member has cracked something that you're just like, ugh, or you're at school and you hear that, you're at the water cooler and you hear the thing, and no pressure there. The only pressure there is maybe you might have someone that's mad at you for a few minutes, or be offended at you correcting them. That's all. That's the only cost there. But if you can convince yourself that you wouldn't speak up in those moments, but when someone's life is being taken and they're being handcuffed, and your coworker is responsible, if you can look at that and not connect those dots, I just think there's some like self-reflecting to do. And I'm not trying to convict anybody, but that's what the truth of the matter is. It's just like, that's how those things relate. Granted, a lot of us we don't work jobs where we're dealing with life and death situations every day, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of work jobs where if I'm a waitress and I have biases in my heart, worst case scenario is somebody is not going to, like, is going to get cold food or something like that. But when you're a police officer and you're dealing with emergency situations and all the time, it's easy for us to just look and say, how could you? But you need to recognize like who you'd actually be in that scenario. You know, that's what I'm collecting.
That's what I'm collecting is, I think, because it's so loud right now on social media, it's so loud everywhere. I think we can miss the simplicity of what I would say in our church so we have people in our church who are black and they serve in different areas. But I've been telling our church, I'm like, hey, I'm not just trying to be loud about this because it's a political issue, because it's not. It's a biblical issue. For our church, this is a biblical issue. And I'm sharing it because I can't sit and say, hey, we love you if you're serving in our church, but when our community is in pain because of everything that's happening and I don't voice that, what I'm saying is, hey, thank you. And I think Furtick, and they said this, but it's, hey, I thank you for helping and serving and stuff, but when you're in pain, I'm not going to voice it. And I think we need to recognize in our church that this is real. When these things happen, it opens up wounds that people that we don't have. And I think we need to make sure that when we voice it, we're not saying, I'm condoning everything that's been posting online. What we're saying is, I see you're hurting. I don't understand all of it, but I'm willing to understand it. And if there's anything that God brings out in that understanding that's not biblical, I want to refine it. I want to renew it. And so one thing that I've been telling people is I have been a part of the problem being in this town. Not recently, not as a pastor and stuff. My heart was changed by God, which He's the only one that can do it. He
Sure.
began to show me those things, but seeing it in my own, my family. When I say that, I'm not. People know my mom and my dad are definitely not there, not seeing it there. But in extended family, jokes and quips, and seeing them, just recently, even which is heartbreaking. And I remember I lost it yesterday. It's not about me, but just crying in my pillow because of another family member who said something, and it hurts because I'm like, I was raised in. I saw that, and so I want to say personally, I've been taking ownership, even though it doesn't happen anymore, that I could admit that I was a part of that problem. I said those jokes. I laughed at those jokes. I thought they were funny. I thought it wasn't even a big deal. And I made them. I said them personally here in this town, and it was ignorance and it was hurtful. And so I think just reminding, telling everyone I'm talking to, I'm sorry now today. I'm not going to live in that. But I know if I was wrestling with it, we are in those conversations sometimes, and I think it's, if anything, in our community, it's just to speak up. Hey, it's not a joke anymore. Like, this is not a joke anymore. And stuff like that. So, yeah, man, that's just so good. The pressure thing that you said was so good, man. It's so true. And like I said earlier, I don't think a lot of people who are in our town are just going to be blatant. There is racism everywhere, but I think it's just, let's just be willing to listen and open up. Here's the thing that's real. Oh, go for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I've, biggest Pontiac?
Sorry,
you broke up.
There you go. Go
How
ahead.
big is Pontiac?
We're 12,000.
12,000? Gotcha. So I worked in I don't know if you're familiar with Goodfield. If I say Goodfield, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So I worked there for a few years, and I'm not trying to lump all small predominantly.
The barn's there. I go to the barn to go eat and watch theater. I'm cultured, man. So. Sorry, go ahead.
But I worked there a while, and legitimately, I think I too used to be kind of like you were saying at the beginning. Just some of those towns can just get a blank label as racist kind of type of thing. I think I too used to be in that camp before I had the opportunity to work there and work with the people. And were things said that were off the cuff? Yeah, maybe. But overall, it was so beautiful, the journey that we kind of got to go on, and the ways that we challenge each other and learn from each other. And I can't just blankly say. I think most people that have racist thoughts or biases, it's just really a lack of exposure and opportunity to people who are different, which I think is no fault of anybody's. You grew up where you grew up at, and that's all. And so it's not fun to be the person to have these kind of conversations with other people and all of that. It's not fun, but the end result and the product is, it's really a beautiful thing. That you have come into contact with someone that you can forever say no, listen, this way of my thinking, or I used to think this about people from here. I used to think this about these types of people, and actually I've experienced different. I know this person, and they're awesome. I think not enough of that is happening, and I was glad to be able to work out there for 2 years.
No, that's good, man. Awareness. I feel like when I hear pastors speaking up, which they should be,
sure,
I can feel the pressure personally by taking their city context and being like, oh, I need to operate that the same way. And and being here, I think it's, yes, there's people who may not know they deal with prejudices, but I think there's also a lot of people with big hearts that if they sat down and knew, let me give you an example. I guess I can be this as real as possible. Like for something I used to say a lot, and you've probably heard this, and then I had a conversation or heard it. It's like, when someone says, oh, you're like they're like the whitest black person I know. Oh, you're like the whitest black. And I used to say that even up to recently, probably last week, and I had a conversation what I hear when you say that is white's the standard, and then now you're putting that on me. I'm the white. This is good, and now I'm this. instead of me just being, a black lawyer. I'm like, to that moment, it broke me. I was like, I told my wife, because we both said it, and we're just had this moment of like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I think most of the time we're so scared to have that conversation, and there's a lot of people who will hear that and be like, I had no idea that personally, it wasn't even offense. They didn't come off like you offended me. It was just a realization, like, yeah, that's not right. Like, we aren't the standard. You are, this. And so that was me personally speaking. For anyone watching, like, that was I would say on my end, you didn't say this, I would say that was my little prejudice that I had no idea was there. And I think if we keep labeling people real fast, we won't give them the time to have those moments. Because remember, in church, Jesus, the Holy Spirit changes the heart. And Absolutely. One thing I've learned from Jesus is he walked along the disciples, and he still called things out as he walked with them. And this might be a stretch, and you can correct me, but Peter and Paul actually confronted Peter because he was hanging out with Gentiles and doing their thing, and Gentiles and Jews was a race thing at that time.
Yep.
And he would go and he would eat with the Jews and have a different conversation, and Paul's like, whoa, what's up with this different, like, why are you acting one way here, but now you're acting different with the Jews? And really what Paul was doing was going, hey, Peter, do you not notice that you're treating one people different than the other? And he had a moment. He grew from that. And I think we have to be careful that as people are saying, let's stand up and rise up, that we don't forget as pastors and leaders, our job is to walk along people as they change, that it takes time. And we also have to know in communities that even if someone has prejudices that has been taught to them, sometimes those mindsets are hard. Not that it's not even compared to what you're going through, but sometimes those things are hard to let go of too. But the answer is, are they willing to? There's a difference between just holding on to it and saying, I'm willing to understand. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to voice, is I want to stand up for injustice, but I also want to make sure that as a pastor, I'm not giving people the time they need to do that. I don't know if that makes sense. And if you could speak to that for a second, like.
It makes perfect sense. And maybe the only thing I would also add on top of that is, like we look different. We are different. Like we said at the beginning. Nobody's colorblind.
That's right.
Clearly a white dude, I'm clearly a black dude, and the world around us recognizes the difference, and there's also a difference in how we're perceived and how the law treats us and how law enforcement treats us. There's a whole slew of things, I just want to encourage everyone to you'll never fully get it, but that's not an excuse to not try.
Dude, that's so good.
Encourage everybody that, like, my wife, after our second baby, she was dealing with and displaying signs of postpartum. As a man, I do not get what childbirth is like. As a man, I do not get what it does to your psyche, like seeing your body change, what it does to your sense of self-worth and your self-esteem, all that stuff. I do not get it. It's not a fun conversation after I come home from the office and meeting with people and talking to people. I'm not excited to go home and talk to my wife about. It doesn't excite me. Like, I don't look forward to it, but that's where intentionality comes in. It's like you fighting your body and you fighting your personality against its own instincts. And you have to going home, and I'm like, I don't get it. I'm a dude. I'm not you. But I'm not going to let that be an excuse to not understand. You know why? Because I love her.
Yeah.
I love her. And so I have to try to get as much as I can out of it. I have to try to understand as much as I can, knowing it'll always be a mystery to me. But
so good, man.
It'll be less and less of a mystery to me. That's what it is. So same thing, just different.
No, it's the same thing, but the way you worded it was so good. And again, back down to scripture is love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
I would want people to take the time to understand me. If I was going through a situation or a hardship, I would want you to understand, hear my heart. So we need to make sure. I think maybe the worry might be when we try to have compassion in these moments for our brothers and sisters who have different skin color than us. I think sometimes it's so vulnerable that, hey, I have compassion for you is different than condoning everything. And I think what's really hard in such a polarizing world, I think what's really hard with compassion is Jesus had compassion for people before he didn't condone a lot of things, but he had compassion. That's what actually, the compassion is what brought the change. And I think people forget that he had compassion for the woman who was caught in adultery before she changed. He had compassion, it said, when he showed up, and it said these people were lost without a shepherd, and he had compassion, and it said his compassion moved him. And so I feel like if we want to navigate this season, we need to be moved by compassion, not just our thoughts. And so I think I just want to let people know what I'm learning as a pastor, as a white pastor leader, is it's okay to be for people in the church. It's okay to be compassionate for things that you don't understand. It's okay to be compassionate for things and not condone maybe something that they're in. Like when they look at an addict, I feel like we need to understand, like, before you just completely go and find out why they are the way they are. When you find out, oh, wow, this is what happened, this is what's going on. And I'm not trying to give way to a victim mentality, but it gives way to compassion to help lead them out of that thing. And what I'm learning as a pastor is I don't need the needs of my people until I have compassion, have conversations with them. And so, man, I just think that's why I wanted to talk with you, man. It's just like, this whole purpose isn't even to ask questions. It was, I want this to be a view, if we're comfortable with this, to show our church this is how we have a conversation. And I told my wife, I said, I want to even voice things that I'm still working on, because I want to say the rhetoric, quote the hashtags, and this is what we need to stand up and we need to fight. But I am wrestling with things. As a white leader, I am voicing, I believe, hear me out, I believe all lives can't matter until Black lives do. I believe that. But I'm also very reserved when I say that, because when you say things like that, sometimes you get lumped in with all the activity. And I think to have that pressure, it's to say, I want to make sure that what I'm condoning is going to be lined up with this. The organization I'm supporting is going to be, do I believe that Sam's life matters? Absolutely, 100%. Do I believe that we need to voice it? Absolutely, 100%. Do I believe, personally speaking for myself, for those watching, that I have privilege? Absolutely, 100%. But I'm still wrestling. I'm still learning this as a pastor, and I think I just want to give people grace to do that. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if I said anything that came off, and you can correct it or say it, but that was me speaking from a very white skin, not just white. I'm very white. Like I burn in the moon. So
sure. So no, nothing. At least for me, nothing needs to be. I don't have to correct anything. And I'll say, as a Black man, I'm continuing to learn as well. Like, the language continues to shift. I think I've heard it put. I've spoken to some people. I've heard it, but some people might think that, listen, racism was solved when Abe Lincoln signed Emancipation Proclamation back in 18 whatever year he signed that. But really, the truth of the matter is, like, that was an invitation. But now we're just now we're just working on feel welcome. When I grew up in school, I had a teacher that if any be outside of this classroom, you have to invite the entire classroom. And it was a rule, obviously, so that no one felt left out or no one felt hurt. But obviously, there's a difference between you wanting to be somewhere or someone actually wanting you to be there, and them being intentional about making you feel welcome. And you just get an invitation and you're just there. You know what I mean? And so I think we're still working on the welcoming part of it. And now just trying to learn from each other and figure each other out, and there's nobody that doesn't have to learn. And I would also encourage if there are Black people listening, or just me speaking to the Black community, is these things are helpful. These conversations, dialogue is helpful. Is there a chance that maybe somebody might say something that is off color? Maybe, but at the end of the day, you have to see their heart. Mm-hmm. And the heart of the person across from you is not to hurt you, it's not to harm you. They're wanting to learn from you. So don't be discouraged, and don't, I guess, be be angry, even though that you might be reliving some other things you might experience. But just give the person that you have the opportunity to have a conversation with benefit of the doubt. Like, know that they have the heart to learn and to love you up, to love the people around them. So that's just an encouragement I guess I would like to share with.
Oh man, so good. So I didn't want, and that's what I'm trying to say. I'm being very careful not to navigate this to make it about me, but I really feel like some of that needs to be voiced too. Because we have friends who they love everybody, but they just don't know how to act around black people. You know what I'm talking about? It's just like, hey, bro, do we do this? And it's just like, whoa, calm down, man. Like, and I don't think it's stemming from that as much as it's been like, how do I do this? I'm supposed to. I need to rise up. I need to share my voice. And I think sometimes, if I could say this as real as possible, there's a lot of people who want to share their voice. They don't know what to say. And I think we're just I'm trying to navigate that for them and pray for them to know there is an issue. It's not about us. There is difference if you sit down with people. And I'm willing to listen and learn, but I'm not going to be the pastor who's going to be like, yeah, so you guys listening to me, you need to get this together. I'm learning as the pastor. And if one thing before we head out, because it's been amazing, dude. And I really appreciate it. And I want to, for sake people maybe watching this later, is that when I said, Black Lives Matter, that's such a hot issue because, and you don't have to, and you don't feel, it's up to you, but what I wrestle with is I believe this. I have to be careful I say this. I believe the slogan. I believe we do need to fight against the oppression. I believe that. Yes. It's just like that thing that when you say something, you get attached to everything that's with it.
Yes.
And I'm wrestling with that because there's been remarks out of pain that I just can't biblically as a pastor align myself with. But I can say that I believe that all lives can't matter unless Black lives do, as the quote.
Sure.
But that's just polarizing, I feel like, and stuff like that. And so I'm trying to let my brothers and sisters know that they do matter, that I want to voice up for you. But just because I'm maybe not saying it as fast as others, I'm trying to understand, am I going to be lumped in with things that they might condone and things that they might do? So I'm just wrestling with that. Right. And I was like, I was been praying about, should I say this or whatnot? But I'm like, why can't I be real?
Yeah.
And that's just where I'm at. So there it is. That was...
I think, I appreciate hearing from you, but same way. I don't say it and I don't speak about it again because I feel like your experience is then no longer given credibility because you're attached to all this other stuff, Mm-hmm. And, yesterday morning, I had the opportunity to share a devotion with our staff on a Zoom call, and I just pretty much left it as like, this is just all I've experienced. I don't want to pull stories from the news or pull stories from the media. I'm just going to tell you like what I've lived, and I'm going to encourage you to have more conversations. And I feel pretty confident that the more conversations that you have with people that look like me,
absolutely,
you'll start to put together maybe a better picture of how communities are really being treated and how communities are really being affected, and why certain people might have the thoughts that they do have. And I think that we're all responsible for that. We're all responsible for trying to gain a sense of understanding for each other. We're all responsible to consider others above ourselves, and so that's the challenge. That's it right there.
Dude. Well, that was, I've been telling Liz, I was like, I told her I wanted to share that, and I was like, honestly, like, it feels weird that I have so much pressure to share that because I know where I stand when it comes to raising my voice. I'll be the first one to do it. But I was like, but I feel pressure on, from different sides. And again, I'm not making this about me because I'm like, then I look at that pressure. I'm like, now I can't imagine the pressure that you guys, it sounds terrible, that your community, I'm working on that, that your community our black brothers and sisters go
Yeah.
through, the pressure that you
Yeah.
go through and stuff. So I don't want to make it about that, but I told her, I was like, I want people to see this video not as us making statements. I want people to see this video as you sitting down somewhere in someone else's living room and realizing that this conversation between like me and Sam's conversation, it'll
Yeah.
continue on the next time we see each other. It'll continue on the next time. And I think what people are looking for is, okay, I watched a 35-minute conversation and what happened? What changed? And it's like, I think that's the problem, is you're looking for something so fast. I believe a lot came through. I believe there's a lot of freedom in this. But I think
Yeah.
people are looking like, well, you should have made this statement, you should have done this. And it's like, I don't know. I think this is just something I'm trying to open up, is if we're going to be brothers and sisters in Christ to come together, that compassion is going to grow, and we're going to learn how to, voice those things. And I told my wife, we love Remember the Titans, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we got to remember that it wasn't the first night at camp that they all like, we're the best friends. And even at the end of the movie, it wasn't like that. They were still wrestling with those things. And I think that's what's the beauty of that movie, is not just like this, they came together and won football. What I love about that movie was it was a conversation that was still happening.
Yeah.
And that's what I want us to be about. So real quick before you head out,
Yes.
what would you want me to understand? What would just ask of me maybe, but also as a white, I would say this for me, I'm not saying for everyone watching, for me, a white
Sure.
privilege, what would you want me to understand?
I guess it's super important for people of color that you consider friends, that you pastor. I guess just anyone watching. If you feel close enough to them, they just like reach out to them, especially as members of the church and of the body. I'll tell you, I know I feel bad when like someone that might be under my care, that I shepherd, maybe on the worship team, someone that I might know within the church has lost a loved one, has lost a job, just got out of a relationship, and I was not there for them. I didn't reach out to them. I didn't check on them. I didn't say anything. I just want to share that the sort of pain that a lot of people in the Black community right now are feeling is those exact same emotions and those exact same sense of loss. There's a sense of grief there, and a lot of times in the past, it's getting so much better. But a lot of times in the past, I think that our white brothers and sisters have failed to see it, and so I would just encourage you, just check on them. It doesn't have to. I mean, just even, hey, listen, I see what's going on, and if you want to talk about something, I just want you to know that I'm here. That's all it's got to be. It doesn't. You don't have to make it more difficult, just like you would if any of those other situations.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, man.
The exact same thing. So I would encourage you that's like a real practical step. And then also just somehow we just have to get in the habit of like making this conversation more common and normal. We can't try and shy away from it. We shouldn't have to wait for someone to die in order for us to be challenging each other in terms of what sort of changes do we need to be making, and what ways do we contribute, all of us, to things like George Floyd happening and Ahmaud Arbery happening.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the overall challenge. But I would also say again to Black people that might ever watch this or whatever. It's not that bad, and it's the only way things get better. And more people than you probably know have the heart and are willing to challenge their thoughts and their own experiences, but they just don't have opportunity. If we just keep it strictly at numbers, I think Black people are 13% of the country. I don't know why it is, something in the 70s or something like that. So.
Yeah.
Obviously, just less Black people. So not every white person knows a Black person or feels close enough or has worked alongside of a Black person and has an opportunity to have a conversation like that. So it's very likely that you might be the first, and don't look at that as a bad thing or think that they are racist just because you are the first. Just look at it as a blessing, and you get to share your experiences in your life with this person in front of you. So that's kind of
so good, man. That was So good. Man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I just want to pray real quick, man, and then I want to pray over you and as you guys navigate this weekend and stuff, and then I know that your family and your wife, which you mentioned and stuff, you gotta go in there and start understanding some stuff. So
Yeah, we're learning. We're figuring it out. Congratulations. When do you do? When's listen to?
August 31st.
August 31st.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, 3 girls. So
3 girls. Hey.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't understand anything about that either, but I'm learning. So,
Yeah.
but we're excited, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking time. This isn't just for a video's sake. I've been making an attempt, and it's already. I feel myself just really getting understanding.
Sure.
Every conversation. So I'm gonna pray. Is that cool?
Cool. Yeah.
Lord, we thank you for Sam. Thank you for his family and just the church that he's serving in. Thank you for this talk. I just love the realness and rawness that we can come together and talk about our weaknesses, our strengths, this being real and open. And we just pray, Father God, that this would bless as many people as it blessed. Well, I know blessed me. And I just pray, Father God, Lord, that there's wisdom in this and just guide us and protect us, Father God, as we continue to fight for unity, as we lift up our voice, and we just know that you're healing our nation, and only you can do that, Jesus. So let's get people to you at every conversation, at every corner, at every door. Let us get people to you, because we know, Father God, that you can heal our land. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Hey, love you, dude.
Hey, I love you guys. Thank you.